Not chasing after someone who didn't see your worth when they had the chance. There's something beautiful, even magnetic, about a woman who knows when to stop explaining herself, to stop giving updates, to stop over-delivering for someone who was barely showing up. That's the moment everything changes. Because now the energy shifts, and you're no longer trying to convince someone of your value. You're just being valuable. There's a moment in every woman's life when she finally realizes that her worth does not need to be explained, justified, or sold like a product. She wakes up and understands that love is not a negotiation, and attention is not a transaction. When someone doesn't show up consistently, when they make her question her place in their life, it's not her job to make them see her value. The more she tries to explain why she matters, why she's worthy of love, the more she chips away at the very power that makes her magnetic in the first place. Because real connection doesn't require a PowerPoint presentation. It doesn't require pleading. It doesn't need an emotional pitch deck. When it's real, it's recognized. When it's genuine, it's mutual. The more you have to explain your worth to someone, the clearer it becomes they're not ready or they're not right. It's easy to fall into the habit of explaining ourselves to someone we want. We want them to see what we see. We want them to know that we're loyal, we're real, we're down for them. We want them to understand our heart, our intentions, our effort. And it's noble, really. It's coming from a good place. But here's the problem. When you start explaining your worth to someone who isn't investing in you the same way, you enter into a dynamic where you're convincing, not connecting. You're trying to sell something they haven't even shown up to buy. And that's where resentment begins to grow, quietly, slowly, almost unnoticeably. You begin to overcompensate. You show up even more. You text more, you check in more, you give more. Hoping that if you just give a little bit more, they'll finally get it. They'll finally wake up and realize what's in front of them. But love doesn't bloom in force. It doesn't flourish in convincing energy. It grows in recognition, in reciprocity, in presence. Every time you find yourself explaining why you should be treated well, take a step back. Every time you catch yourself justifying your emotions to someone who's barely giving you crumbs, pause. Ask yourself, is this connection actually nourishing me, or am I starving while hoping they eventually feed me? A person who sees your value doesn't make you fight to prove it. They don't leave you hanging in confusion, wondering where you stand. They don't make you explain why you need communication, consistency, or care. When you're with someone who's emotionally mature and ready, they meet you where you are. Not with excuses, but with presence. Not with avoidance, but with intention. The longer you explain your worth to someone who isn't listening, the further you drift from your own power. You start to internalize their silence as a reflection of your value. You begin to think that maybe if you were a little prettier, a little funnier, a little more chill, they would choose you. But their indecision isn't your fault. Their lack of effort isn't your responsibility. People love to say, if he wanted to, he would. And while it may sound harsh, it often holds weight. Energy speaks, effort speaks, and silence speaks loudest of all. The truth is, your worth doesn't need a speech. It needs a standard. A quiet, unshakable standard that says, if you can't see me, I won't force you to look. If you can't value me, I won't stay to be devalued. If you're inconsistent, I'll become unavailable. This doesn't come from bitterness, it comes from healing, from growth. From the knowing that love is not something you earn, it's something you share with someone who's ready to receive it and give it back fully. So you stop pouring into empty spaces. You stop auditioning for roles you don't want. You stop proving, persuading, performing. And instead, you just stand in who you are, confident, whole enough Silence is not just the absence of words, it's presence in its most powerful form. It's space, it's tension, it's a shift in the energy that people can feel without anything being said. When you step back, when you stop chasing, when you stop trying to fill every gap with reassurance or explanation, something interesting happens. They begin to notice. They notice the silence where your voice used to be. They notice the quiet where your consistency used to live. They start to feel the distance where you once showed up without hesitation. And in that space, something begins to stir inside them: doubt, wonder, regret. All the things they were too distracted or too confident to feel before. Letting someone sit in your silence is one of the most powerful things you can do. It forces reflection. It creates discomfort. It removes the cushion they once had, the one you provided every time you reached out, followed up, or made excuses for their lack of effort. It shifts the dynamic completely. Suddenly, the emotional safety net is gone. Suddenly, they don't know where they stand. They begin to ask themselves questions they never asked before. Did she move on? Was she serious when she said she was done? Did I push her too far? These questions don't come from cruelty. They come from the vacuum you left behind when you stopped filling in all the blanks. When you let someone feel the consequences of their inaction, you hand them the gift of clarity. Maybe for the first time, they're forced to evaluate what they really want. Because while your words might have been ignored, your absence cannot be. While they may have tuned out your texts, they can't unfeel the silence echoing in their day-to-day. Silence is louder than noise when it's coming from someone who once made effort their language. It's not about punishing them. It's not about playing games. It's about recognizing that continuing to show up for someone who's not matching your energy sends the wrong message, not just to them, but to yourself. Letting him doubt doesn't mean you're playing hard to get. It means you're finally allowing him to do the emotional work on his own. You're not interrupting the process by spoon-feeding him clarity. You're not patching over confusion with just checking in messages. You're letting him sit with the unknown, because sometimes it's only when someone loses access to you that they realize what they actually had. That realization doesn't come through confrontation. It comes through stillness, through space, through the moments when they reach for their phone and realize there's no message from you waiting. Letting him wonder gives him room to reflect on his own behavior. It's no longer about what you're doing to fix things. It's about what he's doing or not doing to meet you where you deserve to be met. The guessing game he once made you play. Now he's the one playing it. The silence he once used as control, now it's become the mirror that forces him to see his own reflection clearly. And in that mirror, he may start to see things he didn't want to face. His lack of effort, his fear of commitment, his tendency to take for granted what was always available. Letting him regret is not about vengeance, it's about truth. Regret is born when we're faced with the consequences of our choices. When we feel the weight of what we once had, now gone, and the absence of your energy, your care, your love, those aren't just minor details. Those were the very things that made him feel important, connected, grounded. When those things are no longer there, regret doesn't just visit, it settles in. It becomes part of his everyday thoughts. The memory of your presence, once background noise, becomes a loud reminder of what he let slip away. Pulling back isn't about playing games or being cold-hearted, it's about honoring your energy. There comes a point where continuing to pour into someone who's not reciprocating becomes self-abandonment. You start giving not from a place of love, but from a place of fear. Fear that if you stop, they'll forget you. Fear that if you don't show up, they'll move on. Fear that if you don't keep proving your worth, they'll never truly see it. But that fear is what keeps you trapped in a cycle of overextending yourself for someone who's only giving you the bare minimum. Pulling back isn't punishment, it's clarity. It's realizing that energy not returned is energy being wasted. It's easy to believe that if you just give them one more chance, one more sign of affection, one more text, they'll finally wake up. But the truth is, people don't wake up because you love them harder. They wake up when they have to face the reality of what life is like without you. When you're always there, always available, always proving your loyalty, they never have a reason to consider what it would mean to lose you. Your consistency becomes background noise. Your presence becomes assumed. That's not love. That's emotional labor with no return. And the longer you stay in that pattern, the more you teach them that they can do less and still keep you. Pulling back doesn't mean slamming the door. It means no longer initiating what they consistently neglect. It means choosing your peace over the chaos of uncertainty. It means creating space for you to breathe, to realign, to ask yourself what you really want, and if they're capable of giving it to you. It's saying, I'm not going to continue giving access to the most vulnerable parts of me when you haven't shown me that you're capable of holding them with care. That's not anger. That's maturity. That's self-awareness. That's emotional boundaries. When you stop responding the way you always have, they notice. When you stop showing up out of habit, they feel the shift. And that shift is often what finally forces someone to reflect. Not because you told them to, not because you begged them to change, but because you did something far more powerful. You took your energy away. People can ignore words. They can dismiss conversations. But they can't ignore the feeling of you no longer being there in the same way. They can't avoid the absence of the effort you once gave so freely. That's when reality hits. That's when the weight of their actions or inactions finally settles in. This isn't about being cold or withholding affection out of spite. It's about making space for mutual energy. Pulling back allows you to see what they're truly willing to do without you pushing. It gives you perspective on whether this person actually values the relationship, or if they were simply comfortable in the role you kept performing. And maybe, for the first time, it gives them the space to step up. Not because you asked them to, but because they chose to. That difference matters, because love is only sustainable when it's chosen freely, not extracted forcefully. You're not responsible for teaching someone how to love you. You're responsible for showing up as yourself and holding space for someone who's willing to meet you there. And when that doesn't happen, pulling back is the only healthy response. Not to make them chase, but to make yourself whole again. To return to a place where you're not living in emotional scarcity, where you're no longer spending every moment wondering what more you can do. Because you've already done enough, and now the most powerful thing you can do is step back and let the energy you've withdrawn speak louder than anything you could ever say. Real strength isn't found in how long you can hold on to someone who isn't showing up for you. It's found in your ability to let go without losing yourself in the process. We grow up being told that love is about patience, loyalty, endurance, and yes, love requires effort. But there's a difference between fighting for a relationship, and fighting against the reality of it. Holding on in fear doesn't make you strong, it keeps you stuck. Because when you're constantly chasing someone's attention, trying to fix what they're not even trying to maintain, you start betraying your own needs just to keep something alive that may already be gone. Letting go with grace is one of the most courageous things you can do. It means walking away without bitterness, without trying to prove a point, without needing a dramatic goodbye. It's quiet, it's calm, it's the kind of strength that doesn't scream, it just exits, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring more about yourself. You realized that no matter how much potential you saw in that person, no matter how deeply you wanted it to work, it can't thrive on one-sided effort. Relationships don't grow because one person is willing to carry all the emotional weight. They grow when both people show up with intention, with clarity, with consistency. Staying in something that hurts you more than it heals you doesn't make you committed. It makes you disconnected from your worth. We've been conditioned to believe that leaving is failure, that letting go means you gave up. But sometimes letting go is the greatest act of love. Love for yourself and, ironically, even for them. Because staying in a dynamic that breeds resentment helps no one. It doesn't give the other person space to grow. It doesn't give you peace. It just prolongs the inevitable while costing you your energy, your confidence, and your time. There's a moment when you realize that no amount of talking, trying, or waiting will change someone who isn't ready to meet you where you are. And in that moment, you face a choice. Do you keep holding on because it's familiar, or do you choose to walk away and trust that something healthier is out there, even if you can't see it yet? That kind of faith takes guts. That kind of decision requires emotional maturity. You stop needing closure from them and start creating it within yourself. You stop needing validation for your pain and start acknowledging it without apology. There's a peace that comes with no longer forcing conversations, no longer begging for attention, no longer re-explaining your worth. You stop trying to fix someone who doesn't see the cracks. You stop waiting for the version of them they promised but never became. And instead, you come back to yourself. You begin reconnecting with your own voice, your own joy, your own wholeness. Letting go with grace isn't about forgetting them or pretending it didn't matter. It's about accepting what is, rather than clinging to what could have been. It's painful, yes. But it's also freeing because now your energy can return to you, your heart can begin to heal, you're no longer living in the tension of hope and reality. You've made peace with the truth, even if it hurts. And in that truth, there's power. Because the strongest people aren't the ones who fight the hardest to keep something alive. They're the ones who have the courage to recognize when something no longer serves them and choose themselves without needing anyone else's permission to do so. Your value isn't dependent on whether someone sees it or not. That's the mistake so many people make. Thinking their worth rises and falls based on how another person treats them, responds to them, or chooses them. But your value is constant. It doesn't fluctuate just because someone couldn't recognize it. Not everyone has the eyes to see what's rare. Not everyone has the maturity to appreciate what's real. And not everyone has the capacity to love at the depth you do. That doesn't make you too much, and it certainly doesn't make you not enough. It simply means they weren't ready for the kind of presence you bring when someone can't acknowledge your value. Your instinct might be to prove it, to show up even more, to overcompensate in hopes they'll finally understand what they have. You give more. You explain more. You lower your standards to accommodate their inconsistencies. And all the while, you chip away at your own self-respect, thinking maybe if you just love harder, they'll wake up. But love isn't about convincing. It's about aligning. It's about mutual recognition, not desperation. You don't need to perform to be seen. You don't need to shrink to be accepted. The right person won't need to be convinced. They'll just know your value is rooted in who you are at your core, in how deeply you care, in the integrity you carry, in your strength, your softness, your standards, that doesn't disappear because someone was blind to it. Their lack of recognition isn't a statement about your worth. It's a reflection of their emotional availability, their maturity, their capacity to connect. Sometimes people can't see your value because they're not connected to their own. Sometimes they overlook you because they're distracted by superficiality, confusion, fear. And sometimes they don't choose you because they don't even know what they're looking for. None of that has anything to do with your worth. Measuring yourself by how someone else treats you is a dangerous game. One moment of rejection can feel like confirmation of every insecurity you've ever had. But rejection doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means that this situation, this person, wasn't aligned with what you're truly meant for. It means you were brave enough to show up, to care, to be vulnerable. And that takes courage. Don't let someone's inability to love you the way you need become the story you tell yourself about who you are. That story is false. The truth is, you're enough as you are, always have been, always will be. The most confident, powerful version of you knows that love isn't proven through pursuit. It's revealed through peace. It's felt in consistency. It's confirmed by actions, not empty promises. That version of you doesn't chase validation. She attracts alignment. She doesn't need to explain herself to be chosen. She simply stands in her truth and lets the right people come forward. She knows her presence is a gift, not a favor. She knows that if someone can't see her value, it's their loss, not hers. And she walks away with her head high, not because it didn't hurt, but because she refuses to let that hurt define her. You can't control how others see you, but you can control how you see yourself. You can't force someone to value you, but you can choose to value yourself so deeply that anyone who doesn't match that energy automatically falls away. That's the shift. When you stop making your worth negotiable, you stop accepting less. You stop tolerating mixed signals. You stop staying where you're not celebrated. And you begin to live from a place of knowing, not needing. From fullness, not fear. From grounded self, worth, not reactive self. Doubt. Choosing yourself is not a rejection of love. It's the foundation of it. It's not about giving up on people or building walls so high that no one can reach you. It's about creating a life so rich and whole that anyone who enters it is there by choice, not by need. There's a profound difference between loving someone from a place of abundance and clinging to them out of emptiness. When you choose yourself, you stop trying to earn connection through overgiving, overcompensating, or proving your worth. You stop shrinking to be loved. You stop bending to be understood. You begin to operate from a place of alignment, where the people around you are not there to complete you, but to complement the fullness you've already cultivated within a woman who chooses herself. She doesn't wait for someone to validate her decisions. She doesn't beg for the bare minimum and call it love. She doesn't explain why she deserves consistency. She simply exists in her truth and lets that truth guide her relationships, her standards, and her boundaries. That kind of self-trust doesn't come overnight. It's built slowly and intentionally through experiences that teach her what she will no longer tolerate and what she truly needs to feel safe, seen, and respected. And once she knows that, there's no going back. She no longer allows her value to be negotiated by someone else's indecision. You become magnetic the moment you stop chasing and start attracting. Not by playing games or pretending to be unbothered, but by being rooted in who you are. When your energy is no longer tied to whether someone texts back, when your peace isn't disturbed by their inconsistency, you begin to radiate a different kind of power. The kind that doesn't seek validation but draws in genuine connection. You start to realize that the right people don't need to be chased. They show up. Not just when it's convenient, not just when they're lonely, but consistently, because they recognize the value of your presence. Choosing yourself looks like walking away when your needs are met. With excuses, it looks like protecting your peace, even when your heart still cares. It looks like trusting that your future deserves more than a present built on confusion, mixed signals, or emotional crumbs. It's hard, it hurts, but it's also liberating, because in that decision, you're saying, I matter, my voice matters, my emotions matter, and I refuse to keep watering relationships that only leave me dry. It's tempting to stay in places where you feel familiar, even if that familiarity is painful. It's easy to hold on to hope that someone will change, that things will be different if you just give it a little more time. But hope without action from the other side becomes self-abandonment, and choosing yourself means breaking that cycle. It means honoring your intuition when it whispers that this situation isn't right. It means not gaslighting yourself into staying small just to maintain someone else's comfort. There's nothing more powerful than a woman who's no longer waiting for permission to be her full self, who's no longer tolerating the bare minimum in the name of potential, who isn't scared to be alone because she understands that alone doesn't mean lonely when you're at peace with who you are. That kind of woman doesn't settle. She doesn't explain her standards. She doesn't lower her expectations to make someone feel more secure. She stands tall in her worth, knowing that anyone who belongs in her life will rise to meet her there. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you don't love others deeply. It means you've learned to love yourself first, so deeply and completely that you'll never again accept anything less than what reflects that same depth back to you. When you stop explaining your worth, when you let silence speak where words once lived, when you pull back not out of spite but out of self-respect, you step into your power. Real strength isn't found in holding on to someone who won't hold you back. It's found in the quiet decision to walk away with grace. Your value doesn't fluctuate based on who sees it, and your life doesn't pause waiting to be chosen. The moment you start choosing yourself, you stop seeking validation and start attracting alignment. Let him doubt, let him wonder, let him regret, but you keep rising, you keep becoming, you keep living in the fullness of a life that no longer depends on who stays or who doesn't. Because the one who truly sees you won't need convincing, they'll just show up and stay.